coming out on such a wonderful day. Such great weather. Oh, looks like we're waiting on a few more, so I'll give it a few more minutes here. Is there anybody coming in the front doors there? Sounds like we might have a couple more people.
We should stop snowing for you.
I'm glad we didn't cancel it now. Okay, we're all good now? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming out in this weather. I mean, of course, you know, somebody was complaining about how cold it was going to be and how we're going to have snow. Like, you realize you live in Chicago in January. So in fact, Monty said, should we cancel? I'm like, no, we shouldn't cancel. Like, we're Chicagoans, we're used to this kind of stuff. I'm not going to say a whole lot up front. I could probably talk for an hour and hit issues that I know you're going to ask, but I don't want to step on your ability to ask questions about migrants and crime and all the things that I know you're going to ask, right? So I'll let you guys ask those questions rather than delve right into it. But so just on an overall, Orland Park, we're doing extremely well. We all know the struggles we deal with Cook County and the state of Illinois. But you know, our focus is to try and, you know, just like, you know, think of California. There are pockets of California that are still fantastic places to live and don't deal with a lot of the California problems, right? So we want to be one of those places that is just remains fantastic in spite of all that's around us. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of doing that. So I'll just kind of hit, you know, the highlights of what we've done over the last 6 or 7 years. I can't tell you enough about the 6 board members I have. They're fantastic. You know, I talked to a lot of mayors, and of course I've been through a little bit of a gamut of, right, walked in and had board members that weren't so fantastic, but now we have just a great board. And I talked to other mayors, and the one thing that I don't have anymore, and haven't had for, you know, what, 5 years, is I have a board that none of them have political agendas. None of them have, I mean, some of them may do something else besides be a trustee in the future because they're really good people, but they have no aspirations for that. So they just, and I asked them all to do 3 things when they ran. I said, all I ask is that you're honest with me. In other words, I just don't want any surprises. I don't want you flip-flopping. Just tell me what your issues are. So be honest with me. Vote your conscience and do what you think is in the best interest of Orland Park. And what I've discovered, even as mayor, I deal with a lot of mayors, right? And I deal with mayors that are Democrats, Republicans, probably more Democrats than Republicans. But at the end of the day, the mayors tend to agree on almost all the issues. And the reason why is because the solutions to the issues are usually pretty obvious. If you look at the facts and you look at the options, usually the solutions are fairly obvious. And mayors agree because there's no politics getting in the way, because everyone has their own town. They're not really fighting politically at all. When you have these issues, even at the state level or at the federal level, don't kid yourself for a second. People know what the solutions are. It's the politics that get in the way of getting those things done. So here in the village, and that can happen in a village too. You know, you think about like after my first 2 years, I had a 4-3 board generally. There were the 3 aligned with me generally. And so a lot of 4-3 votes. All it takes is one of those 3 to say, well, I want this, this, and this, or you're not getting my vote. That's playing politics. I don't have any of that. They just do the right thing, and it really makes the village run well. It gets good insights, and so I'm very lucky in that regard. And it's allowed us to do a lot of good things. You know, the park projects, you know, that we can talk about. I'm sure you'll ask some about all the park projects that we have going on, all the road work that we've done. I mean, when I walked in here where our roads were 40% in poor condition, only like 10% in good condition, I think we're over 60% in good condition now and less than 15% poor because we've invested more money in the roads. Because basically it was allowed to get deteriorated beyond where it should be. So we've put money into those things, and we're able to do that because we first fixed our financial situation, got rid of a lot of our debt, and to put ourselves in a position where, one, we could do these things, and two, for some of these bigger projects, we now have had the debt capacity to actually go back and do those things. And because we borrow at such a low rate, like a big project, you're never going to pay. I mean, these two projects are, $11, $12 million each. You're never going to fund that out of 1 year's budget. I mean, it's just not. It's like a mortgage, right? So those are things but that's something you're getting for the debt. What you don't want to be putting debt into is apartment buildings at 9750, which was a lot. We had $64 million of debt tied into that. So things like that. But I'm really excited for the next year. Lots of good stuff is happening. You'll see Schuessler Park here. That's going to get done. So that'll be finished except for the ADA, the all-access park and playground. That will not be done because we're raising money through kind of a private charity partnership to try and raise money for that. So we do have some money budgeted for it, but not enough to complete it. But all the rest of it will be done. And for those who are familiar with the park, the drainage problems will be solved. So it will no longer be underwater all the time. So in fact, they finished the dredging last week, and then they just approved a change order to dredge it a little bit more and do a little bit more dredging on it. So the pond is almost completely dredged at this point. And then Centennial Park West, same thing. That will be finished. So first concert's I think going to be June 7th. Taste of Orland will all move out here. Here, I'll slide over to this side. So that'll all be done. The Schuessler Park should also be done in that time frame, although we really want to make sure it's done in time for the football season, but it should be done well before that so soccer and lacrosse can start playing on it as well. We also, the Veterans Center, so we have a depiction here of the Veterans Center. That should get completed. That's a building we already have, but it'll get remodified, and we're going to move the Veterans Center over to that building. Their current building is basically beyond its useful life, has a lot of maintenance, a lot of expenses that would go into it. This building, it gives it a good another 20 or 25 years of useful life without massive expense. They're going to get a new storage facility as well, and so bigger storage, more what they need for. So the Legion and the VFW store things like they store some of their uniforms. They also store guns and things like that they use for because they do a lot of the funeral services out at Abraham Lincoln and that kind of thing. So we'll move that next year. Close to the end of the year, we'll finish this, and most of you heard about this because we're talking about it beforehand. But this is actually the police firing range. This is a 2-scale model built out of Legos from our public works director, who was an architecture major. And as I told him, he channeled his inner geek to build all of this. But it's got all the stuff on the inside. It's got there's roofs, but we took the roofs off. So all of those things are going to get done. So some major projects. Still continuing our road projects. Supposed to finish the Spur 2 water main down Wheeler next year. Is supposed to get done. It's been delayed about a month, but currently, but that should get done. They were moving really good too until the delay. And then what else should be finished? Well, got some road programs that should be done. I think Laguna Woods will be finished. Fernway will finally be finished, and that's been going on. That was originally scheduled for a 10-year thing. We ramped it up to like 6, and that should be completed. It will be completed early spring. So a lot of these big projects that we have had going on will be done. So additionally, a lot of businesses that after COVID started to look to come in here. So Pete's Fresh Market should open. They've said summer, but it's probably going to be more spring time frame. Steinhoffel's in the summer, which is a furniture store in the old Orland Park place, took the Bed Bath & Beyond and Steinmart. So you have that facility as well. You've got some restaurants like Seasons 52. We have, I believe, Fogo de Chao has submitted. So we've got a few of those things as well. And then we've got other things looking to come in as well. So a lot of positive things coming for Orland Park when you consider what we've been through with COVID, with inflation, with the crime issue in Cook County and nationally, frankly. Obviously the situation from coming across the border, all of those things are, obviously put a lot of pressure on towns, and we're still doing great. So I'm really excited about the next year, really looking forward to it. And, with that, I'll just open it up to questions.
Is the pizza grocery store going to be in that little shopping center where Dollar Tree is?
Yes, it's at Art Van. It's where they've been doing all the construction there for almost 2 years. And the reason they had to do all that construction is they actually added to the back of the building. If you add to a building, now you have to go back into MWRD, so the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and get into stormwater issues. Well, the stormwater rules have changed a lot since that thing was built, that area was built 40 or 50 years ago. And so they have to now meet the new requirements because they expanded the building. If they stayed in the existing footprint, they would have been fine. But because of that, they had to dig up the parking lot and basically they had to store water on site. So they had to put storage under the parking lot. So they had to do that. So that's taken a little bit longer.
I have one more question. Where the KFC used to be, are they going to put another business in there now?
Well, I don't know who they are, but like any vacancy that we have, businesses, call and we give them those vacancies. So I don't know if there's anything pending. I mean, KFC just left a month or two ago, so I don't even know what's out on the market or what. So, but any business that we have, open, is private. They're privately held pieces of property, so somebody can purchase them, somebody can enter them. So we're not always familiar.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question if you don't want to talk about it.
Well, I didn't say I didn't want to talk about it. I said I wasn't going to talk about it up front. I said I didn't want to steal your thunder and give you a chance to ask the question.
The migrants. I've been seeing on the news, a lot of these different suburbs have in place ordinances where if these buses try to drop them off, they'll get fined thousands of dollars.
Yep.
But I haven't seen anything about Orland on the news.
That's because, generally speaking, we try not to pass ordinances that are against the law. Those ordinances, it's our attorney's opinion. I'm not an attorney, but it's also, I look at it, I'm like, as soon as I saw those, I'm like, I'm not so sure we can do that. And so we believe those ordinances are against the law, and we actually believe this Attorney General is likely to take all of those municipalities to court. So we have not passed that. Monday night, we are passing an ordinance, which some people would probably say, well, that's against the law in the state as well, but it's not against federal law, so we'll take our chances. But we're passing an ordinance basically stating, and we shouldn't really have to say this, I think it would go without saying, but we are not a sanctuary city. So we're making that very clear. We're not a sanctuary city. We're not going to follow, state of Illinois or Chicago or Cook County. We're going to follow federal law. So that's really just that simple. It's not very long. This is what we're doing. So we're just making it clear. And we shouldn't really have to pass that because all we're doing is saying we're following federal law. We shouldn't have to pass an ordinance saying we're following federal law, but it's just kind of where we're at today. So.
Do you have a tentative opening date for Pete's Market?
One, Pete's Market is a private company, so I don't have any dates. As I said, they said summer. We think it's actually going to open in the spring. But as far as dates, I don't have any dates.
Have you been addressed by the migrant situation at all?
So back to the, kind of expanding on what I just said. So we haven't had any issues. We have a plan in place to deal with anything if we see it. What we've told people is if you see large buses, the charter type buses, they're not typically seen in Orland Park. Right? If you see them, just let our police department know, and we'll check it. We'll check it out. We'll monitor it, and we'll make sure basically they don't drive. Here's the interesting. So I'll kind of expand on this. Maybe this will answer all of everybody's questions on this issue. Is that obviously we can get into the whole immigration. I mean, it's just, it's crippling our country, it's crippling our economy, and it's happening at the southern border, right? This is where the problem is. The problem is beyond the state. And for the lip service, the governor and frankly, the mayor of Chicago are paying to this, they're not really calling out the real issue, which is the real issue is you've got a porous border. They're yelling at the governor of Texas, who's getting 1 million people crossing his border that he can't deal with. And he's like, well, fine, you're a sanctuary city, could take them, right? And they're also talking out of both sides of your mouth. I know you're shocked by that. They are, so at one point, Chicago has the migrant bus thing, right? You can't drop buses here. But what Chicago is doing, they have 2 intake centers for migrants, okay? They have 2 centers that are set up to intake the migrants, and they're still taking them. So basically, on one side, they're going, oh, we're going to fine you. On the other side, they're going, yep, if you get them in the suburbs, send them in, right? And then they're going and asking for money, okay? And they're asking for for tons of money. And at the end of the day, the migrant situation, illegal immigration as a whole, is costing $500 billion a year for the U.S., okay? It's costing well over $1 billion, probably closer to 2 in the state of Illinois. And for those of you who've been to these things before, I've talked about how the Illinois shares money with municipalities. Well, they cut that back in 2011. They started to raise it back under Rauner. It was coming because it was supposed to be temporary. And then they took it back. And then basically under Pritzker, they've taken it all back. So they basically, Orland Park, by the end of 2027, will have been shorted $75 million. Well, you think about like these projects and everything. I mean, that would pay for all that. And that's what we've been shorted from what we had historically gotten. I mean, this isn't like something new. And we've been able to absorb it, but towns like Harvey, Posen, those towns can't absorb that because we all get the same per capita dollars on that, right? So they're shifting that money to the migrants is what they're doing. And you saw that they're taking over schools in Chicago. Well, Brandon Johnson invited all the mayors to come to the United Center on Tuesday to discuss the migrant issue. And when you see, and so I was given a heads up on the email, and then what happens when you click on the email, and basically it's all a political stunt. Because when the mayors don't show up, the mayors that don't show up, they'll attack and say, you're not interested in solving the problems. By the way, I'm not going to go. Because when it says, are you going to come, and then it asks for all kinds of information, then it asks, will you take migrants? Will you do this? Will you do this? It's all trying to get information to offload their problem. Like, you created the problem. You're a sanctuary city. You deal with it. I'm not going to bail you out of this problem. And, so again, they're basically, and at the end of the day, Pritzker and Johnson want them here. That's why they're not turning them away. They want them here because guess what they get now in the state of Illinois? If you're an undocumented, they document you with this, a driver's license. What do you think that makes it a hell of a lot easier to do? Vote, which you're still not supposed to be able to do with that ID, but anybody think that's not happening in Chicago? So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's happening. And then once you do that, how do you get them to exit? In the big picture, and then they'll say, oh, you don't have solutions. Well, I have some solutions for you. One is lock down the border so no one new can come in. Everyone who's claimed asylum gets the ability, by our laws, gets the ability to have a hearing. Instead of spending $500 billion solely on all the benefits and everything else, why don't we take $10 billion of that, hire some judges, hire public defenders, and in a year or two, wipe out all of the, instead, because some of these people aren't going to court till 2029, right? So get them a court date within the next year or two, and only 1% approximately of these things that get heard are asylum seekers actually get asylum. Send the other 99% back to where they came from. That's what we should do. Now, once we do that for the people who've come across in the last 3-4 years, then we can deal with the people who've been here for 10 or 20 and all of that. But you can't do any of that until you lock down your borders. And we just have to stop people until we can get this mess cleaned up. Hey, we're going to have a moratorium, and if it slows the flow of goods, so be it. We can deal with that because I think we got to deal with this problem. But that's obviously way above my pay grade. But so that's a migrant.
The police fire are political
So we've planned it. We haven't planned any rental fees for other departments, but we will allow, other departments will be able to use it. They'll pay for using it. So much like right now, we don't have a shooting range. We have to go elsewhere to shoot. So we will open it up for that. But we haven't factored that into any of our financial analysis or any of that kind of stuff. But we do know that it will be available to be used by others and by some of the joint teams that we have. There's a South Suburban SWAT team which we participate in. There's some other teams that we participate in. So that they'll be able to use this facility.
Is somebody working on that though? Is it somebody in the finance department should have some kind of
So understood. At the end of the day, we needed this facility for our folks, right? So it didn't factor into the decision process. We know that there's a potential to rent. We know there's a potential for income, but it's not even built yet. So we don't know who. So we're not running out trying to talk to all the police departments at this point to see what's out there. Our chief talks to other chiefs, the conversation's out there. Once this gets done, those departments the ones that are in need, they'll be reaching out. And we may enter into intergovernment, we have, for example, an intergovernmental agreement with Orland Hills. We handle their detention, we handle their 911, and basically, we get paid for that. We get paid about $250,000 a year on top of all of their 911 taxes go to us. So we end up getting all that money. So we will be doing that, but again, it didn't factor. The decision, regardless of that, needed to be made. So and then that income will be factored into future budgets as we get deals set up. So.
Sears, you're talking about development. What's going on with the Sears area there at the
So the
mall?
Sears area was purchased at auction by, I think, I get them confused, CubeSmart and CubeWorks, but anyways, it was purchased by a company at auction. They didn't even know what they were bidding on. They never saw it. They had done something in Maryville where they took a Carson's and bought it, and they took all of Carson's, all the furniture and rearranged it and had all kinds of small little shops in there or whatever. And they're like, well, that's what we're going to do. I'm like, well, good luck since it's already gutted. So they never even saw it, right? They didn't know that they owned the parking lot. They also own the drive that goes from the parking lot to Regent Drive. They own that driveway. They also own the stoplight as part. So what people don't understand is the mall does not own the whole mall. Each of those 4 anchors are owned separately, and they also own the associated parking lot and ring road. So the mall only owns like 20% of the exterior. Right, and then you have to get agreements when you want to change things across all 4, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes way back, right? So my understanding is last week they contacted us and they supposedly are going to submit a plan. I don't know what that plan is, so we'll see. The plans they've submitted in the past, frankly, they've submitted a couple of ideas. They've been underwhelming, so we'll see what they come back with. Yeah, it's Cube. I think it's CubeWorks. There's 2 companies. There's a CubeSmart and there's a CubeWorks. One of them is doing a storage. I think it's CubeSmart is doing a storage facility over by Gizmos in that corner that used to be Carson's Home Goods, which is actually a really good fit because it's self-storage, and so there's not a lot of parking needs. So it actually fits pretty well. They're doing some landscape upgrades. It's all been approved, but. So it was approved a while ago. We actually thought it would be in by now. Then there was ownership issues because apparently there's some covenants in the different pieces of the buildings, and so somebody has a right to refusal, and so they've been ironing that stuff out. But it is approved. We're just waiting for it to go. It's a good use just because it occupies the building. It's not more retail per se, and it's in a good location for that kind of a use because it's not very visible. And it's all indoors anyways, and very few people park, at those places.
There's a lot of income possibilities for the area.
Well, if you think you have income ideas, I'm sure that the owners would be willing to be bought out or have those income ideas. Everyone has ideas, but at the end of the day, the businesses have to think they can make money at those places, and That's the issue. COVID obviously killed a theater because it killed the movie industry for a time. And who knows, that may come back and that may end up being, because that has been approved in the past. So you just don't know. So, but the rest of the mall is fully leased.
I use the recreation facilities in Tinley Park free of charge almost every day. But if I want to use the same facilities here where I live, I have to pay for it. Why is that?
So I don't know why the Park District at Tinley Park, I don't control the Park District in Tinley Park. So the Park District in Tinley Park is a separate taxing body that taxes more than the Village of Orland Park in their property taxes. So, you know, our philosophy has always been that we subsidize 50% of our recreation facilities and our recreation. That's been our philosophy. So we subsidize 50% of it with property taxes. The rest of it is through user fees. So I also don't think, frankly, I don't think we should be providing free recreation facilities when we have private gyms like Life Fitness and all that. We're already competing with them. We shouldn't be making it so that they can't succeed. The Orland Health and Fitness, when that was done, which was before me, we've spent $13 million on that building, getting it up to speed. And the decision at that time, and we have not changed it, the decision at that time is that that will operate at a market-based rate, not be subsidized by taxes. And we have a place that's subsidized by taxes in the Sportsplex, which is very, very affordable. The costs are very low. And we also have things like our walking track and things like that that are free, but not the equipment and all that.
Of course, I forgot to mention the facilities are free for senior citizens. There are programs that Orland Park can join also, which makes it
We're familiar with those programs, and they're not free, and they cost all the rest of the taxpayers. So seniors are subsidized. I mean, I'm 10 years away from being a senior, and we have a big senior population, but seniors are subsidized via property tax already with the property tax freeze and all that. And all that happens, just so you know, when there's a property tax freeze, is if you're a senior, your property taxes get spread amongst everyone else in the village. So everyone else that's there picks up the load. That's what happens. And so they're already doing that, and I don't think, and I think our senior fees at Sportsplex, you want to look them up? So I'll get back to you on that, but they're way lower. So as they also are at they're not way lower, but they're also lower at the Orland Health and Fitness. So, and we have, so a ton of those things are way less expensive, but at the end of the day, we still have to operate the village, and our choice would be, we could do, so if you combine Tinley Park and Tinley Park's Park District, I think their property taxes are about 3 to 3.5 times ours. And, that's ultimately, I mean, if you want to pay triple the property tax to Orland Park, we could do those things. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's because again, so that what would be happening then is seniors would be frozen and everyone else, including our businesses, would have to pick up that triple. And that's not, I don't think that's right. At 69. Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't sound right because it's way less than that. But when you get it, you can let me know.
This is an animal, I guess, for whoever's responsible, especially when it snows, the snowplow tracker app.
Yeah.
I think that's very good. I've seen, like yesterday, I saw where all the snowplows are, what time they came down my street.
Yeah.
My neighborhood already. I think, I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but it's very
What John is talking about is on our website. We have a snowplow tracker app. You can look at it. You can look at your street. It'll tell you what time the plow's been through. So it'll show you where the plows are all at. We've actually had the ability to track that for some time, and that was some time before we could link that to so the public could see it as well. So you can see it. I mean, it's interesting. We just did a survey, and the lowest part of the survey was transparency. I'm like, I don't know how much more transparent we can get. I mean, even our operations are on the website, so you can see it. So. Yeah, so it's $28 a month for a senior membership, and what is it for a regular? Regular is 40. So a regular membership at the Sportsplex is 40, a senior membership is 28. That's a 30% discount. That's a pretty hefty discount, I think, that we're given to seniors. And $40 a month even for regular, to go work at the Sportsplex where you have a gym and you have, and granted, you've got young kids there and it's not the same as a private gym. I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good deal. So.
Sorry. I guess get back to the taxes. So does it look like our taxes are going to be raised in the next year or so?
So we just lowered the property taxes $500,000. So if you go back to June of last year, we passed a 5-year financial plan. And this included these projects and all the capital, and really the big needs are capital, right? And when I say capital, that's roads, that's parks, that's buildings that were built. We had a big rash of growth from the early 80s to, say, the mid-90s. All those buildings now, like this one, right, need refurbishment. Anyone who's been in this room a year ago or like a year and a half ago, this room is way different, right? It's been updated a lot. It's a lot more functional. There's a lot of things that we're doing some things. We're getting rid of the cultural center because it's just too expensive to fix. We're moving all those programs to the Levy Center, so we got to make some changes there. We had to spend $3.5 million on our soffits here, HVAC equipment, just all of that stuff, right? And we've evaluated all of that. So it wasn't, the only things that were really being evaluated before I got here were the roads. They were doing that. The rest of it was not being evaluated. So we weren't evaluating our parks. So we've done that. We did that, and then we did that in 2018. And then over 5 years, we went into everything that was in poor condition and fixed it. Before, they were fixing one park every year. We've got 66 parks, one park every 2 years. So 66 parks, 130 years, that doesn't work, right? So we kind of changed how we did that. We put more money towards it. So we know what we need for vehicles, we know what we need for buildings, we know what we need, even the new projects like this. We also have, starting next year, I didn't mention the Public Works Garage will start to be expanded. We've just gotten bigger. And that building's 30-some years old, so it needs some revamping, right? So doing all that, so we know what all our costs are. So we went painstakingly for 2 months, several public meetings on this as well, what our priorities were for the next 5 years. Basically, we had about $100 million of unfunded, a little bit more, but $100 million of unfunded capital projects that we couldn't fund directly from what we're currently bringing in. So we looked at, okay, well, how do we fund this? I just told you, by 2027, we will be shorted $75 million from the state. Well, there you go. Right there, that's part of it. Also, there were some bad decisions made in the past. So if you remember the tax rebate, okay, the $150 check you would get every March, magically 2 weeks before election, the local elections that showed up. What you didn't know is that we borrowed money every year to give you that. Every year. A total of $38 million of rebates borrowed with interest. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $54 million. Now take that 75 and that 54, 127. We've got all these projects funded and have more money, right? So what we did in June, we said, how can we kind of change the structure of how we fund things? And we tried to shift things a little bit more towards usage and a little bit away from property tax. So what we did is we upped our sales tax. So if you've been to the store, you may notice, if you notice, but 60% of our sales tax comes from people not from here. So that will bring some dollars in. We also put most towns, almost every town around us, with the exception of maybe Mokina, has a utility tax on gas and electric, a couple percent. We implemented that. And believe me, nobody on the board wants to increase any of those taxes, but we did. As part of that, though, too, we also got rid of the vehicle stickers, which is a pain for everyone to do. So we said, okay, we're bringing this in. What can we do to reduce some taxes that are painful in other areas? So we got rid of that, and we also said we would lower property taxes, which we were able to do. So we took about $500,000 of our levy, which is about 4% of, and to put it in perspective, the library increased their levy again, 4.5%, which for one building. So we did that, and that combined with the ability to restructure our debt will allow us to get all of these projects financed over the next 5 years. And then it should put us on a good ramp too, because we'll now be caught up. We're so behind with what we did with paying those rebates and everything else is we neglected capital. We were underfunding our roads, we were underfunding our parks, we were underfunding our buildings. Well, anyone who's had a business knows if you, and our vehicles, I'll give you an example. Our vehicles, when I got here, average age 14 years old. That includes the police department, and the average age of those were 3.5. So think about that. You know, so we've had to get new vehicles, all that. But now, and you know, I remember one board member said, well, let's just borrow the money and do it all in 1 year. I'm like, well, if you do that, then 20 years from now, another board has the same problem of having to spend $40 million in 1 year, right? So what we did is we doubled our spending on parks, we doubled our spending on roads to catch up, but also catch up at a pace that in the future we can have a steady state. So by the time we hit 2027, 28, we're going to be spending less on roads because we're going to be back into a steadier state, less on parks because we're in a steadier state. Our buildings, we will have basically, you know, redone all the HVACs, redone all of the stuff in the buildings that need to get done, and put us in a better place. So then we will be, you know, we'll be in a much better. So the idea is that by the kind of the end of like 2030, we'll be on a pay-as-you-go where we don't have to, even for our bigger projects, we won't have to borrow anything. That's kind of the goal. Taxes should be stable for, you know, based on the planning, they should be stable for more than that. We've put us in a position where we should be stable for quite a long time. I mean, you never predict. I mean, if the economy just, or you know, retail. I think retail, the e-commerce retail thing is kind of steady stated out. I don't think it's going to change a lot. But if there was some big change in that, I guess we could see an issue. But I think overall, and some of the other projects that I didn't talk about that we're doing in there, that includes funding portion of the 143rd Street widening where we got money from the feds and the state still isn't kicking in money. So we're going to get that done. It also includes a couple other projects that we have. It includes doing Dugan Park. You want to flash up the Dugan Park? Because I told you the cultural center is going away. So cultural center is going away, and so that's Dugan Park. So let's look at the actual park as opposed to there you go. So if you see down here on the lower right where the kind of the rainbow color thing, that's where the building sits now at the parking lot. That's going to go away. So there'll be a playground there, and then up above that, those are going to be pickleball courts. So big pickleball push. If people want pickleball courts. Seems like a good fit for that area. And then we're going to redo the field that's out there. It's been used I used it for football when I was a kid. And we're just going to redo that field and just get it into better shape. Adds another good field. That's the benefit of, say, the Schuessler Park with the 2 turf fields. It's going to allow us to take some of the other fields, like 1 field or 2 a year offline where we can get them refurbished. Right now they get so much use, we can't do that. But having a turf field, we can do all the use we want on it, and then we can get these other fields up to speed. So that's the plan there. The baseball diamond will stay. Obviously, there's a lot of parking there already. So that's kind of the plan for that park. So that's also in the plans. Dugan Park's where the cultural center, the old village library, for those who've lived here for a while, on Park Lane. So it's to the west of West Avenue in the older part of Orland. So for me, it was the new library as a kid. But then it closed and the other library opened up in 2002 or 3 or whatever. And then that became the cultural center. So we did some events there, but we're never full. It's always been kind of like partially used. And it needed to rehab the building, $6 million. We actually offered it to the schools because they were looking for early childhood education. They are now expanding 4 or 5 schools for way more than $6 million. They could have done it here. I don't know why they didn't choose to do it. That's their decision. We offered it to them, but you said, okay, well, if the schools don't want it, we're just going to level it, make it, and just expand the park. Because we don't really have a need for it.
What's the latest on the triangle? Is there any development going on?
Yeah, so the triangle, we've been going through the process. We've had several votes. We are, you got a picture of the triangle? Well, just Google map it. So currently it's a TIF, and I'm not going to go into how TIFs work. There's a great video that Vince, who's running our cameras right now, did on TIFs. So you can go online and you can see the triangle and you can watch that, and it'll really explain how TIFs work. And TIFs don't raise your property tax, although the schools will try to tell you it does. It doesn't, okay? So what a TIF does is it fixes property taxes at the rate they are, and then anything over that life of that TIF that's additional property tax that that place pays goes into that project for public improvements, so roads and things like that. So it helps developers build on a property that they may not otherwise be able to build economically. So we have a project, and we're in the process of doing this with, and maybe I'll just walk up here and kind of point it out here. So the triangle basically is this, and it goes all the way up here. You could probably shrink it down just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So this is what we call the triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to shrink and this is an existing TIF, and it ends in 4 years. So TIFs can be 23 years long. What it does is, so if I have a property, like all these properties have no tax because the village owns them, right? So that's real simple math. 0 property tax. Any property tax we get, well, once this is built, goes into the project. So we can use it for the roads, the parks, those types of things. That's what we did before. The current triangle project, the one that was way before my time, we are about $27 million in the hole. We're never going to get that money back. So a good TIF, you're going to generate more money than what you need. We haven't even come close. So we lost $27 million. And a lot of the reason is, too, that we put University of Chicago there. You're trying to get property tax. They're a non-for-profit. They pay no property tax. It's foolish to put a non-for-profit in a TIF, but we did, okay? It's foolish to do a TIF when at the time we had an entire shopping center that was taxable, okay? And we did a TIF, and then we used that money to buy those businesses out. Well, which we can do, but now we lost 10 years of generating property tax, right? Because you want to generate as much profit. So what you really want is you want to have a plan and implement that plan like right away, so you can start getting things on the property tax rolls and getting that money. So, and not a non-for-profit. So we're shrinking this TIF down, which we can do, and creating a new one. And then do we have that anywhere, the plans? Well, I'll just kind of walk through it. This parcel here right now looks like daycare center is what they want to put in there. Some medical and office here. Along this road here is going to be retail, restaurant, and upper level is going to be office. So it'll be 2 levels. You'll actually have a couple of rooftop restaurants there as well, and then an entertainment use here. We're going to get rid of the park, entertainment use here, and the park is going to go on this parcel. It's going to be a bigger park. It's going to also move our ice skating rink over here, so that in the winter we have some more activity. That is supposed to break ground, hopefully, this year. The TIF process is a long one. It takes a year or so. We are well into that process. So we're hoping to wrap that process up by the summer, and then by the fall, we're hoping they break ground. We will actually be doing work next year, because the other thing that we did is, I mean, anyone who knows even a little bit about construction, where are all your easements? Where do all your utilities run? Sides of your property, right? And then they cut into your house, right, or to your property. That's not what we did when we did this, way before me. We ran utilities right through the middles of properties, so we have to actually pay $3.5 million to move them. So a lot of stupidity that was done in the past. We can't change that. It's a sunk cost. It's something we've, it's there. I mean, it is what it is. All we can do is deal with what we have going forward, and we think the new plan is a good one. It's going to add, so the new plan has no residential, no additional residential, retail, restaurant, entertainment. Is an office. And one of the reasons we're putting money in via the TIF is because of the office space, because we feel we need more office space, and that's part of the reason why we're helping in this, because to make the office space competitive, they need some of that. So, and a lot of the money will be for moving the utilities. It will be for moving for the park. So again, public infrastructure. TIF money can only be used. That money can only be used for public improvements. It can't be used for, so it can be used to buy out the businesses, move the businesses and that, but there's only specific uses for TIF, and that's by law. And so that's what all those, and I think in total, we think it's going to generate about $32 million of TIF money that we can help incentivize. The project as a whole, I think, is 85 or 90 as a whole. So it's a pretty sizable project, but supposed to start, the goal is to have it completed, everything occupied 4 to 5 years. So then that's going to give you 18 years of generating that TIF dollars.
Can you tell us more about the entertainment use? Because I read something about video gaming and this type of thing, but that's been a while, so.
Yeah, that place died a long time ago. So the entertainment use there on Crescent Park is to be determined. They're talking to a few different places, but you're talking about the e-gaming, which is different than, people say video gaming, they think gambling. No, it was e-gaming, it's completely different, but that's not what's going there. So it could be a bowling, something like a Pinstripes or something. It could be a lot of different things. They've talked to several different places. Hey, I'm fine with if it stays just a bigger park, but so that's kind of where we're at right now. That's the one thing and I can't really talk about who they have a lot of things lined up. That's the one thing that, and it's the last parcel they're planning on redeveloping anyways.
Could you tell us something about the hotel situation in Orland Park? What's happening?
What about? Well, we opened, what's that? Yes, Hampton Inn is open, and many, many days it's fully booked. So, and their rates are pretty high too, so they're doing very well. I mean, it's beautiful too, actually. So, I mean, I see a fair amount of hotels, maybe do 12 or 15 stays a year. So I see enough, and it's a very nice hotel. So, and then we got somebody else that has submitted for a hotel as well. We'll see. We do have a need for it because they're booked. We only have 2. So I'll see if I can get my volume off on my phone. So we have a need for it. So we have 2 hotels, that's it. Giorgio's is not in Orland Park, it's in Orland Hills. Has an Orland Park address because who wants an Orland Hills address? So, so.
Just wondering about the summer concerts, are they moving them or in Crescent?
The market, so Market in the Park is going to move to this. So this being the Centennial Park West, so Market in the Park will move here, as will Taste of Orland will move here. It's actually been designed for Taste of Orland. You want to pull up the drone footage on that one? So stage is being built right now. They're doing the masonry on that. But these vendor areas are going to have concrete pads with electric already run to them. We don't need the volume, although I appreciate the music. So this is Centennial Park West. You can see they've been moving the dirt, and that's the stage area that they're working. And we're planning on, this should be open in May. So you can see they're already building the stage up. And it's further along than that. They now have the scaffolding and the masonry's going up. The scaffolding's behind plastic so they can work. Interestingly too, this down to the kind of bottom right portion of the screen there, anyone who's been out there before, that's like a 9-foot drop off now to run all that water. So it's been built up a lot. And the hill that you see in the back there, that's back here. The hill before was here. So it's much, much bigger. When you're out there, you get a sense for how big the space is. But you'll have, you can kind of see the path there. There's that, so up by, between the townhomes, you can kind of see the hill to the right of that, and then there's like a path. Well, there's a retaining wall. That retaining wall has been completely built. That's retaining walls here. There's going to be an access path for the vendors so that you could actually bring goods and stuff to the vendors without interfering with the people that are there to enjoy the concert. You're going to have a walking path for the concert. All this will get done, and that's going to be sodded so that we'll be able to use it next year. So this will, the goal here is to be open. I mean, we have a June 7th concert, so it better get done. So it's a little bit behind from the April 15th, but not, we're not in a bad spot yet. So, we've had some bad weather, but we've had a lot of good weather too. So you can see a lot of work. So now the work over the next couple months is going to be all of this. Really, the masonry for the next 2 weeks is what they're going to do, and then they're looking at pouring concrete pads. But everything, all of our events are going to move over here. More parking than anywhere in the village. So you want to pull that up on Google? Google, so we can see the parking. Yeah, about 3,000 spots. So, yeah, I mean, you think about everyone's like, oh, how are we going to park? And I'm like, right now we take the parking up for Taste of Orland, and we managed to do that. And we have almost no parking, and we're parking on the ball fields. So, do the satellite. Go north. See the Metro parking lot there? Right at the end of it. So the Metro parking lot's right here. And then expand out. Right underneath that is Centennial Park. There's parking up to the north of that, which is the Metro parking up on that side. So you got Metro parking there, and the Metro parking actually goes to the east as well. You also got parking at Centennial Park as well, because at night you're not going to have a whole lot of big events, and obviously the pool's closed and all that. So there's a lot of parking. So we should be good on all of that.
Stop. Is there any interest or plans with the old Terry's Lincoln Mercury property?
So that's owned by the folks that own Pete's Fresh Market, and they've submitted some ideas and plans, and we actually approved. So back to the TIF discussion we've had, it's one of the few economic tools the village has is a TIF, and it actually meets the requirements of a TIF. So we have signed escrow agreements with that group for 3 different properties, for the Terry's Lincoln Mercury site, and for the Andrew site. They own the Andrew site now, and one other. The other one is 159th and LaGrange, where PD's 2 is at. So those 3 sites, we've signed an escrow agreement for the TIF. The escrow agreement is because we said we'll be happy to evaluate the TIF and how much money your plans can potentially generate and how much we can contribute, but we're not paying for that assessment. So they've put the money in escrow to pay for the assessments we have to do to see if that's viable. The nice thing about the 143rd and John Humphrey is that for a TIF, we can actually use it for public infrastructure that improves the project. Well, that 143rd and John Humphrey corner used to be an IDOT road. The village got IDOT to widen it many years ago, but took jurisdictional control, so we own it now. And because it was a non-numbered route, you can do that. The problem is they screwed up the 143rd and John Humphrey intersection. So it's about a $12 million project to fix it. Anyone who's been through there kind of sees it sinking. They did it on styrofoam or some new technique that didn't work, basically. So, but we can use that money from the TIF to contribute to that, so it's not being used by property tax or other things. So.
And while I got the mic, can't be any happier with the improvement of the roadways. And now I'm not objectionable to no more vehicle stickers, but since we still need to improve some roadways, why get rid of the vehicle stickers?
Well, again, we looked at everything. We had $106 million of unfunded projects. We're still improving the roadways. We're still doing it on the pace that we think is appropriate, right, to get into the position that we want to do. And so over the next 5 years, actually, so we were spending a little less than $4 million. We made it $8 on just the public road. That's not even like the Fernway project. That's just public road resurfacing stuff. We doubled it to $8. We are basically now probably on the year 2028 or 2029 of what the plan was when I arrived as mayor. So we've really advanced things a long way. We cut back this year to $6 million from the 8. And we think after the 5 years, we'll be $6 million through 5 years. And then after that, we'll be able to go back down to a steady state 4 and keep it in a good spot.
So weren't vehicle stickers helping?
They were, but again, we instituted a utility tax. We increased the sales tax, so we said, hey, vehicle stickers are a bit of a pain. Let's just take those off. So it was kind of a balance. We increased some revenue, but when we decrease some things that are problematic, right? Property tax, which the village is a small part of your property tax bill, but we're doing what we can. and then vehicle stickers, which were a pain, and quite frankly, they're a pain to administer. Yeah, because we had to hire people temporarily to do it, and so the net of it all, it's like it was a net, I think, of $500,000 a year, and so the net of everything, we just said, hey, let's just get rid of that, and so we kind of, we tried to give, well, we increased some, we tried to also decrease some as well, right, and tried to balance that.
Good question. Our public works department does great, I will say that. But on my block, I have the same offender that parks their car on the street, snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm, probably the last 3-5 years that they've lived there. Yet they've never gotten a ticket, and then the snowplow, when it does come down, it doesn't do our side of the street very well because that car is always parked there. Oh,
What road do you live on?
they live on 85th Avenue and Walnut, the corner,
85th and what?
in Walnut.
So if that's the case, feel free to call the police. They will come out there. I know yesterday we were out there ticketing, we were out there towing, and I know for a fact because it happened in my neighborhood, and they went out there. They were going to ticket, and the car didn't have plates on it. It was just like dropped off in a tow truck like 2 days before, which is kind of strange. Very odd in our neighborhood. They knocked on the door. Apparently, they just bought the car or whatever. They went out, they moved it into their driveway. Okay, so that's the first thing we try and do. But if they're not there, we'll tow them. So that surprises me because our drivers should be letting our police department know. But you can certainly call the police department and say, hey, there's a car parked here. We can't get our, and we have, every time we have a snowstorm, we have our CSOs are out there doing tickets all the time. So if you tell us where the address, she'll let our police department know, and they'll look on it.
Speaking of parking, is there any limitation on the number of vehicles that a individual family home could have? We're getting in our neighborhood several houses that have 6 and 7 cars parked.
I don't think there's a limit.
Today I went by, there were three on one side of the driveway, a big truck on the other side of the driveway, and then 2 cars out in the street.
So there's no limit to the number of cars on a driveway, but there are limits to, you can't park off the driveway. You can't park in your, obviously in your, on your lawn. You can't park off to the side in between. If it's not, on the driveway, you can't park, you shouldn't be parking across the sidewalk and on the apron. So there are rules on that. So as long as they're between the sidewalk and their garage, there's no limit. And also street, there's not a limit. So, but if they're parking across the sidewalk, if they're parking on the, on the grass, you should reach out to the village, give the village the address. We'll go out there, code enforcement will go out there, inform them of the violation, hopefully get them just to comply, and then if not, they'll ticket them. Just so you know, our code enforcement, we spend a lot of time on code enforcement. Very important. It's very important to keep houses looking nice, not having trash in your yard, all those things that are unsightly. We know it leads to rundown neighborhoods and all that. So we spend a lot of time on that. But we have 22 square miles. We have over 22,000 homes, okay? So, and then not including the multifamily stuff and all the businesses, okay? Our code enforcement officers do not run around checking every block. They can't, okay? So we are a complaint-driven, if we see something, like, if I'm driving around and see something, I'll let us know, or, they'll do the same thing. But generally speaking, we respond to complaints. So if somebody says, hey, my neighbor's got a lot of trash or whatever, right? And they're not taking care of their yard, we'll go out there, see if they're within the rules, if they're not. And a lot of times it's education. In many cases, we have, people who come here and, they may have immigrated to the country, or they may have grown up, they've been in the city their whole life, right? So they haven't really had a yard. And it's kind of you see everyone else's yard, keep it looking like that, right? Kind of a deal. We try to handle it without tickets, but if we have to go to the ticket route, we do. It can't even get to the point of liening properties where they can't sell their property and that kind of thing unless they take care of the fines that are involved. We try not to, we hope with that and we never get to that point, but we do. So we go through those processes, so we have those.
I think this is part of what I'm seeing is related to the number of people living in a particular home.
Yeah.
Is there a limitation on number of individual families or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't think we can get in, we can't get in, we can't do anything about that, right? I mean, you think about that from that perspective, I mean, well, I get that that can happen. On the flip side, do you really want the government being involved in that? Do you really want the government being involved in saying that, hey, I'm older now and now I'm living with my kids, and oh, by the way, my kids are still living there as adults because they can't get a place. Do we want government regulating that kind of stuff? It's a pretty fine line. As long as they're following the rules of, not making the property unsightly for everyone else, which deteriorates property values, I don't think we want to be getting involved in that.
Do your village rules apply to townhomes? Like
we-
if there was garbage, and do we go to homeowners or can we go to the village?
Well, you can contact the homeowners association, they could do something, but the village can also, if they're individually owned units, and if it's we have one that thinks that because they're renting, they're a commercial unit. It's like, no, you're renting residential, so you're residential, so you need to follow residential. They don't want to pay for waste and garbage and all this. And it's like, well, even our commercial pay for waste and garbage. So yeah, you have to pay for waste and garbage. So you just have to contact us and we'll go out and look at it. I mean, a lot of the issues that we have are, sometimes are townhomes, or they can be apartments too, because, hey, I grew up in apartments, right? And some people take care of their apartments, but some people, it's just human nature. They don't own it. They don't take as good care of it, right? So we do a lot of stuff at any place where there's rentals. We do a lot of compliance stuff to make sure that the renters are following, that they're following the rules, putting the garbage where it needs to go, that kind of stuff.
Are you still thinking about another access road to the hospital off of LaGrange?
You want to pull that up on Google? Well, we're not thinking of another access road. There's already an access road plan, so it's in our long-term planning. I was going to say you got to go south, but. So if you expand that out just a little bit so you can pick up LaGrange Road, you see where that bend is in Ravinia, where it comes through, where it dead ends right now? That is supposed to connect to where the word sushi is, where that intersection is. That intersection is already built for a light. So that is supposed to be connected at some point in the future. So that's in our long-term plans whenever that gets developed. Now, remember I told you that we were looking at a potential TIF on that corner piece there, 159th and LaGrange. That would be part of what the TIF money would be used for, would be to build that road. So that's, but that road will go in when that property gets developed, more than likely, and not before.
The gentleman regarding the code enforcement that you brought up regarding the issue, and I want to kind of echo your comments and his question. I don't want to criticize the village because I think you're doing all you can. I mean, Ed from Development Services has called me back on various occasions, and he's been wonderful with the communication. But things aren't getting done, Mr. Mayor. I mean, and I don't want to go into detail of what things I'm talking about.
Well,
but
without
I
any
can give a
details,
laundry
I
list
can't.
of things over the last 3 or 4 years that I brought to the village's attention. What I believe, and this is my comment, you have a changing demographic that's happened in this village over the last 20 years. I think you need to take a second look, and maybe a stronger look, when he brings up the fact that there's 6 or 8 cars in a driveway. Okay, who cares how many people live there? But we don't need 6 or 8 cars in a driveway every 6 houses in a neighborhood.
But we have this document that I've taken a lot of oaths to defend, and also took an oath as a mayor to uphold, which is the Constitution. And so when you start talking about government getting into property rights, it's and don't get me wrong, we have zoning laws, we have rules that have to be followed. HOAs can have rules that need to be followed, okay? So, and you can make a decision whether to move into a place with an HOA. But when you're talking about the government controlling how many cars you can have, how many people can live in a house, I think that's a step, I don't think that's a place we really want to go, because that's it may work in one situation. You may say, well, this is a unique situation, it's a problem, but then once you start doing that, you do it everywhere. And, I don't think that's something that just as from a constitutional perspective, one of the things that makes America unique is property and our ability to own property and control our property. And don't get me wrong, the village certainly has rights to say you can't do this with your property, you can't do that with your property. But as I said, with the cars, they have to park on their driveway, they can't park on the lawn. Those are reasonable rules. They can't park across the sidewalk, they can't park on the apron because that's Village Parkway, so they can't park there, but they can park on the street. We cannot control street parking unless we control it for everybody. So people say, well, you can't let them park cars, X amount of cars in front of the street. Well, the only way we can do that is to say no parking on the whole street, on that whole side, which means that everyone living on that side now can no longer park in front of their house when they have a party or they have people over there. So again, I understand your concerns, but we have to follow the law as well. And you may have brought stuff up, and I don't know what stuff because I don't know the specifics. But when things are brought to our attention, we address them, but we have to address them within the law. And I will give you a really good example, and you could go out here, take a left on 144th Place, and look right up on the hill, and you'll see a house that is an eyesore. It's the siding, it has been that way for 20 years, and the village has been in court with them for 20 years trying to get that resolved, okay? I mean, it is literally, and the people that live there now, the guy's a nice enough guy, he would keep submitting for permits. Previously, the village would give him those permits, and then he'd never complete anything. And we no longer give him permits. We've got liens, we've got all of these things, but we have to still follow the legal process, and it is not easy to take away someone's property rights, and quite frankly, it should not be easy to take away people's property rights, because imagine if it was. Imagine if you had where the government could easily take away your property rights. You get somebody in office that wants to do that, they can basically take it all away, like that, and it could be yours. So, again, I think it's a fine line. We have to follow the law. We have the rules. Bring the stuff to the village's attention. We do address everything. I've never seen anything we didn't address. But it may not end up being resolved like you want because we have to follow the law. So, and we have no ability to control how many people are living in a house. I suppose we probably have some, but it'd have to be really extreme. And again, we can't control it if it's private person. We can control it if you have a group home, a commercial business, those types of things we can control. But from a single family residence, it's very hard to do anything about.
What ones that are in a rental situation for single-family homes?
So we have crime-free rental housing ordinance, and they have to register with us, and they get inspected every 3 years. And there are rules. I don't know what all the detailed rules are, but there are rules they have to follow with regard to that, including, I believe, occupancy stuff. So we do inspect those homes once every 3 years. So when I got here, we were inspecting all the homes, all the rentals every 3 years. So on the third year, we expect. We've changed that to be a little smarter and do rolling so that we do, and we actually license them in a different way. We license them for 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years so that we can get them on that schedule. So that now we do 1/3 of them every year, which makes a lot more sense. It's a lot easier to manage your workload as a village. So we do that.
Well, I think as this gentleman said, I think we're seeing the demographics of our village change.
But
As the whole country is.
well, the demographics of the whole country have changed. The demographics of Orland Park they changed from 1970 to 1980. They've changed, and they'll continue to change.
The people who live adjacent to these properties have property rights also to maintain.
And that's why we have rules, and that's why they have to conform with those rules. And if they're not conforming with those rules, then we address it. If they're conforming with those rules, there's very little that we can do. And what's the old comment? You can't pick your family, and you can't pick your neighbors. That's just it. Well, you can't really pick your neighbors either. I mean, right, because things change. So, sometimes you have neighbors you like, sometimes you have neighbors you don't like, and yeah. So, that's just. But we have to follow the law, and again, you always have to think about these things. You're like, okay, in this particular instance that I'm frustrated with, okay, and I kind of, because I'm in my role, I think of it this way. This situation, I want this to happen, okay? Well, the government should do this. Well, now think about the logical extension of that. If the government does that to this person, the government can do that to you. And because of something somebody else doesn't like that maybe you think is fine, right? And so you really have to think about that. Do you really want government to go down that path? I don't think we want government to go down that path. I do think we have rules, and I think believe me, I have in my neighborhood, I have some people that don't maintain their yard, okay? And our code enforcement was out there 3-4 times. It was several tickets before they finally got the message to maintain their yard and keep their yard mowed and keep it cut, right? And so it was, so that's just, so we do deal with it, but like I said, we have the rules on the books and they have to follow the rules. So, and if they're not, we'll deal with it. And if they're parking, like you said, and parking in the grass and that kind of stuff, let us know and we'll address it. Okay. Well, hopefully say it loud enough so we all can hear it.
Yesterday was our garbage day, Friday, and they didn't come. Everybody's cans are still out there.
So the BIA might have a response to that because I'm sure we know about it.
So we were contacted by we contacted Waste Management as we do every time there's a snow event. So about 6:30 in the morning, they had a meeting and they decided, their drivers were out. So about 50% of the customer base who has Friday service did get picked up. But then trucks were breaking down, getting stuck and what have you. And they thought for the safety of everybody involved, they pulled their trucks a little bit before noon. So they will come back next Friday and pick up, yeah. Well, they also will pick up bags. If you put just bags out there, they will pick those up as well. They don't have to be in the bins.
Yeah, so obviously yesterday, yesterday was a pretty bad snow event from a heavy snow situation. So I knew Nabia would have an answer because I'm sure you're not the first person to have this issue. We put that on social media, right? Yeah, so it's out there on social media. So we try to inform people as best we can. I mean, unfortunately, it's just kind of a weather-related situation, kind of unique, obviously, and you can kind of hear how it was handled. And so, unfortunately, we live in Chicago, and sometimes these things do happen. Like, so.
He's on board. We live in Eagle Ridge.
Okay.
And he's on board at NIDA, and they're all calling him.
Yeah, so now you can tell them. You can tell them that, Waste Management kind of suspended pickup because of, the issues they were having, and it was, well, today, you're still going to have similar conditions, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the contract calls for and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, they're coming next Friday, right? And they will pick up bags as well. I know they'll pick up bags anyway, so it doesn't have to be in a bin. So if yeah, so. Okay. Well, but when you put it out, when we put out trash, it can be in a bag. What he's saying is you can't leave it on the street in a bag over the course of the week. But if it's pickup day, you can bring it out in a bag. So because they'll pick up anything that's loose that is of a weight that they can handle, they'll put in. And anyone who's got families over Christmas know this because you end up with bags. But yeah, what he's saying is you can't leave it out there for the week in the bag. You can't leave it out in your apartment. You can't throw it all at the back of the apartment complex or whatever. That's what he's talking about.
You mentioned 3 big parcels earlier. Did you say somebody affiliated with Pete's owns those, or?
So the same company, so they're affiliated, yes, the same landscaping, or no landscaping, the same real estate company that owns all of those properties, the same one that owns the Art Van, and they are affiliated with Pete's.
Are there plans for that yet?
So we've seen concept plans for all three of them. We've given feedback on those concept plans. They haven't been submitted. So we've, but they have not been submitted. But they're, in this case, the Andrew property has been purchased and is owned by somebody different than CommScope, who bought the Andrew Corporation. So it is bought by, so somebody owns it, and they are trying to develop it. So like I said, we have meetings all the time with developers, and we really can't. I mean, we can kind of give you some high-level stuff once in a while. And basically that I can tell you that because it's public. If it hadn't been public that we passed the escrow, wouldn't even be able to talk about it. But they'll submit plans. Sometimes they'll be really detailed like this. Sometimes they'll even be higher level than that. And we give them feedback of what we think would work, what we think won't work, but they have not formally submitted anything. And they're probably waiting for our TIF assessment to see how much money could potentially be generated.
Where is it? Season 52 going?
Seasons 52 is going into Chewy's. How far along are they? They're close, I think. They have all their permits. They have all their permits to do all their construction. They have all their permits to do all of their construction, so. Chewy's has been closed for a while. I don't know what happened with Chewy's. What we've heard is that basically their lease was expired and the landlord said, "See ya." So they probably had Seasons 52 already lined up, and they probably were having problems with, who knows. But anyways, so yeah. So in restaurants, anyone who knows anything about restaurants, most of them don't last 3 years. So so there is turnover in our restaurant pits. IHOP is supposed to become a Wild Fork. That building's supposed to be demoed. It was supposed to start demoing it last week. They went out to demo. The demo company went out to demo, and when they went out to demo, they heard some buzzing, and they checked, and there was still power, which is not good to be demoing a building when there's power. And apparently, the power had been turned off, and someone from Wild Fork, not this contractor, went back and turned it on. But thankfully, they didn't actually start demo with live power, because that could have been bad. So it's going to take from last week 1 to 10 days for ComEd to turn off the power. Once the power's off, then the demo starts again. So you'll see. Denny's, we've seen some. We've gotten interest. We get calls. We have not seen a formal submittal. The problem with the Denny's site, more than likely it'll be a new building, which needs to be. The problem is it's a very small site. Because I told you that the rules have changed for the stormwater and that kind of thing have changed a lot. So they have to actually do stormwater on their own property. That property is very small. So that's the issue. We've seen a couple things. We've heard a couple things that would actually be good there, we think, but we haven't seen a formal submittal. Old Baker Square is a hibachi Asian place, and they've got a sign out there. That's been going on for what, 2 years? That's been going a long time. I mean, these construction projects have been just taking a long time. What other questions? Yeah, don't get me started on Houlihan's. I don't think get her started on Houlihan's either. Houlihan's has it's a tenant, and I think the landlord has a tenant issue, and we have an issue with the potential tenant, and who has tried to occupy it without an occupancy. There's been a lot of issues there. So the bottom line is, the person who thinks, who wants to go there, you know, has had a lot of, has basically tried to just circumvent the village entirely, I would say. Is that fair? Yeah. So yep, you read that correctly. I'm just telling you that, yeah, it's a non-for-profit restaurant that doesn't think that they have to follow any of our ordinances. So, anyway, but the landlord, but then there's landlord issues and there's all kinds of issues. So at the end of the day, we're just making them comply with the rules. They're not open. They're not getting. They don't have occupancy. They're not getting a liquor license. You know, just all of those things. So, so I wouldn't anticipate anything's going to happen there anytime soon. Hey, Bonnie, have we had any complaints about the mail?
Yes, and you have to call, it's a federal office. You must call your congressman,
Yeah, there's really nothing we can do. And there's some places in Orland where the service is great. There's some places where it stinks. I think it really just depends on the individuals, and I think it really depends on the individuals and that are delivering to it. And we have no control, though. It's a federal. Congress is the overseer of the post office. So call your congressman, which is either Jackson or Caston. Call them, and believe me, we've had our own issues with them because with the post office. Silver Cross, that's building is, by the way, it opens, what, March 19th is the ribbon cutting? I think it's already open, or they're starting to open it. But that's Orland Park, but it had an Orland Hills address. Took us over a year to get the post office to change it to Orland Park. They said no numerous times, and we had to, you know, really go to bat just to get the and it's Orland Park. Basically what they did was they made it an Orland Park, and they just gave us another zip code. So now we have a 60187 zip code as well, which is a section, but it can be Orland Park. So, because zip codes can be multiple towns, so rather than changing the zip code, they just changed and allowed Orland Park to be part of it. So, because unlike Giorgio's that wants an Orland Park address in Orland Hills, no one that's in Orland Park wants an Orland Hills address. So.
Is there anything going on with the strip mall east of Looms on 159th Street? It's an eyesore.
East of Looms, is that the one with Lover's Lane in front? Yes, yeah, oh, we know. Yep. I'm not aware of any ongoing problems there. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, that's not one of our problem children from a code violation perspective that I'm aware of, so. All of our strip centers, I mean, the reality is retail has shrunk, and so all of the strip centers, but I would rather strip centers struggle than have the mall and the core of Orland Park struggle. And so it's just something we have to deal with. A lot of the strip centers along that area probably long-term, you know, Waterford Plaza, that they're long-term, and I say long-term, 10, 15 years, I would imagine it's going to get expanded into auto. Would be my thoughts, but you'll probably see, you know, more auto dealers, because that's our auto dealer role.
People tell me I'm crazy, but I go there all the time. I shop there. I don't feel unsafe. See the police presence all the time. So please spend your tax dollars at our mall. That's what saves our mall.
Well, so the mall is doing great. The mall is a top 1% traffic mall in the country. It's a top 10%. It's a top 10% in dollars per square foot sales. It's occupied. I think they've got, you know, waiting list on some things. What people don't realize when it comes to malls, and I didn't even realize some of this, when it comes to malls and leasing and what goes in there, there's a lot to it. So, you know, like, I'll just throw this one out there. Oh, we need a Lululemon. Okay, great. Lululemon wants to come to the mall, but they only want to go into 3 spots. in the mall because they want to be by Apple, or they want to be by this, or they want to be by that. So, and then Simon's like, well, okay, great, you really want to be here in this mall, but if you really want here and you want this prime space, we want you to sign up to be in this mall and this mall too. So it's a lot more complicated than one company. And, oh, by the way, those 3 spaces that they want, maybe they're occupied by tenants that are paying good rates that Simon has no ability to move. Some tenants in the mall, in their lease, Simon can move them to a different part of the mall, in a different location. Others, they cannot. So it all depends on, so it's a big, giant puzzle piece that they're constantly working on. So, but the mall's doing, but to your point, the mall is doing great. This is one of the interesting things we saw in our survey too, and why I will continue to pound this home, is that the youth supervision knowing about the youth supervision program, knowing about the fact that our crime is low, our crime at the mall it's the safest mall in the region. It's safer than Oak Brook, safer than Woodfield. It's the safest mall in the Chicago region. That's just a fact. And those numbers were there before I became mayor. Why the previous mayor kept saying how bad it was, because he wanted for some reason tear it down, which would destroy it. By the way, if we would have tore the mall down, it would have destroyed the town. Destroyed it. We wanted to tear it down and put townhomes and that kind of stuff. It would have been done, because it is 10% of our direct tax revenue, probably 40% of our indirect, if not more, because it generates a lot, it generates a lot of traffic, et cetera. And the mall's doing great. So the mall's safe, and then you throw in the youth supervision program, and the youth supervision program went in March of 21, and since we've put that program, now those were the 2, the mall put it in the 2 highest retail theft times, Fridays and Saturdays. Since that time, I think there's been less than 5 retail thefts during those times over the course of almost 3 years now. So you think about that. So it's been very, very successful. They were very reluctant. I pushed really hard. Chief McCarthy asked me to push really hard. I tried to use the relationship we had through the Sears and the Von Mauer and everything else to push them. I said, hey, what do you got to lose? And then they did it. We supported it heavily. And it's worked out great, I think, for everybody. And the malls and their tenants love it, and they've actually put it in some other places now. So it's gone very, very well. So the mall is doing great. And I think what we saw from the survey is most of the people who don't think the mall's doing great haven't been there in well over a year. So they don't know. So you got to go there to see it. I'm not a big mall guy, but I go to the mall and I'm like, and I was at a mall in Denver, and I'm like, be honest, the Denver Mall is a little bit more attractive. Why is it more attractive? Well, because it was built 20 years later than ours was. So it's got it kind of looks like Colorado, right? It's got big beams and all that kind of stuff. But then when you really look at the storefronts and the tile and everything else, it's the same. It's just that, some of the stuff is, some of the rustic stuff is kind of attractive. But again, it was built 20 years after ours. So you think about it, ours looks very nice inside, and it's comfortable, and I don't have any issues with it. So. So we're on Simon all the time for JCPenney. So Simon bought JCPenney. The problem is that's a leased space, so they don't own that property. So I would imagine as Sears gets redone on the outside that there's more likelihood that Penny's. Macy's also needs to do some work on their exterior as well. Von Mauer was hopefully going to spur some of that, and then obviously COVID happened, so all the retailers are trying to survive. So I
can't imagine if Von Mauer still comes if it's after the pandemic. I think it was a great investment for the town.
Yeah, well, I think everyone with the pandemic, they opened 3 months before the pandemic, right? Everyone, any retailer got crushed in the pandemic, and they're just now recovering from it. So yeah, of course, but fortunately we got them, and that was high on my list, was to revamp the relationship with Simon, which we did, and we knew Carson's was going to go before it did. We knew 6 months before it was gone that it was going to go, and so we were already working on it, and the plan was always to get Von Mauer. I'd already had conversations with them before. So it's February of 2018 that the announcement came for Carson's and for Carson's, Sears. Carson, Sears, Carson's Home Goods, Toys R Us, and Babies R Us, all was February of 2018. I was about 10 months, 9 months into being mayor. Thank you very much. Good. So, but we'd already had conversations with Simon. We knew it was coming. In February, I had a conversation with Von Mauer. In May, I went to Vegas for the retail conference. The CFO of Von Mauer was there. And so we met, we talked on the phone. We met at a Starbucks and 15-minute conversation. And I said, Bob, what do you need to get the deal done? And he said, we need $7 million to get the deal done. And I said, I think I can get you 5 to 5.5. 7's going to be tough. Let me see what I can do. And we came up with a plan. That's when we got the school boards and the fire district on board to abate some of their taxes. So we got them to like potentially 6.5, potentially 7.5 if they do really well because we're sharing sales tax. And we got the deal done. I can tell you, for a big deal, when that was a big deal, easiest negotiation ever. They came here for a day. We walked through everything. They were the greatest people to deal with. They didn't BS. They said, this is what, I just asked them, what do you need? And we said, this is what we can do. We ironed out the things where we had gaps, and it was done. I'm like, this is the way it should be. Two people being honest with each other and trying to find a win-win. And we did. And Simon, believe it or not, they bought the Carsons for $15 million, I think. And then they sold it to Von Mauer for $1. So they've got skin in the game too. So they put an investment into Orland Park there. So everybody, and then Von Mauer started and they realized how bad the brick was and they ended up having to spend like 15 or 20 million more on the exterior than they planned. So it was a good get. And they're not doing as well as they had planned, but a lot of that's COVID, right? Because they just got shelved right out of the gate. So, but still doing okay. So. No problem. It's kind of my job. What other questions?
I want to thank you for the candid display you gave this morning on all these issues. Wish you well.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks. It's funny. It's funny you say that because what was our lowest ranking item on our survey? Honesty was the lowest one. That the village being honest. Yes. And I just think it's people just distrusting government. I'm like, I don't know how much. I mean, I say things that aren't necessarily politically popular either. Like today, right? I told you, hey, we raised some taxes, we lowered some taxes, right? I mean, so I just try and tell you what the facts are, and because it goes back to the solutions to the problems are fairly obvious. You see what the problem is, you see what the solutions are, and those are the problems. It's kind of that $100 million of unfunded capital. Okay, well, our choice is not fund it, in which case we continue to fall behind with our roads and our parks, which deteriorates and it just feeds on itself, and then eventually the community deteriorates, or we bite the bullet, we fix it now and get us on a good long-term ramp. And I think, so that's what we did. I didn't hear any questions, kind of maybe a little bit with the mall, but no questions about public safety? That is a first.
I feel safe publicly.
So it's the biggest concern by far in the survey that we did, but the village is doing fantastic on that front.
Speaking of that, what's going on with Gizmos? We were going to shut them down. Have they been?
So that wasn't Gizmos. That was, what's the other one over there? Sky Zone. Sky Zone. So that was Sky Zone, and we did suspend their license. And there was a long, drawn-out process, a lot of stuff that we did. They changed a lot of the things that they were doing, how they were doing business, and we haven't had a problem since. So, so we don't. I'm not aware of any problems that we've had over there. One question I do get from time to time is the Safety Act, the impact the Safety Act has had now that it's been in since September 1st. I think the biggest thing, so we haven't seen a ramp up in violent crime, I don't believe. And I think part of the reason for that is Cook County was already living under the Safety Act because that's Kim Fox's policy, right? So we were kind of dealing with that, people being let go. So we haven't seen the spike in violent crime that they have seen in some other counties. okay? We have seen a spike in retail theft and other crimes. Not so much violent crimes, but retail theft, burglaries, that kind of thing. And that's because these folks know they're going to get let go. So, for example, we had a retail theft over at Ulta. Caught the person and they had to be released. We got felony charges too right away, which think about that. We got that from Cook County, we got felony charges, but they were released. And when they went to get their car from the impound, they pepper sprayed the impound guy. So they just, so, I mean, bail or being put in jail was a deterrent I think, for a certain type of criminal that maybe they have a job, maybe they have a kid to feed, right? And so they need to be home. And just the threat of I could be in jail and not be there to take care of my kid, or I lose my job, which I still need, keeps them from stealing, right? Now, most of us, hopefully all of us in this room, that's a foreign mindset to us. I just won't steal because it's wrong, right? But that was a deterrent. Well, now that they know they're not going to be in jail overnight and they're going to get home, they go ahead and take the risk, right? And so I think we are seeing that. That's something we're seeing. So I would expect to see our numbers are going to show an increase in retail theft, and we're seeing that already, but not violent crime. I really haven't seen that.
The mailboxes that you mail in, I noticed they're disappearing.
Well, there was a rash in the area of people basically taking a chain and pulling the whole mailbox and taking the mailbox. So they just got rid of the outdoor mailboxes. I mean, it's just a sign of the times, and that's a federal, federal crime. The secret or the post office handles that.
Is the village charging more on village ordinances rather than going to the state on felonies or?
Well, we don't charge, right? The county charges, the state's attorney charges, so. Oh, so we do, we've been doing this for a long time. If somebody steals a couple $100 or a kid steals a couple $100, if we try and get charges from, let's just say we get charges from the county, if we go to the county court, it's gonna get tossed anyways, right? So it's a waste of our officers' time, it's a waste of our time. So what we've done is a lot of those types of low-level offenses from people who are first-time offenders or kids or stuff like that, we'll send them to the municipal court, and we'll fine them and make them pay the fines that way. And we get the revenue from it. We don't spend as much time at court because the court calls aren't nearly as long. And this person hopefully learns a lesson without getting into the bigger system, right? So we do a fair amount of that for lower level stuff. And I think other municipalities that can do that as well now, because if you send them to Cook County, you're not getting, but if it's a felony, we go to the state's attorney to go that route. So it's really misdemeanors.
You still have this, Kim Fox still got a $1,000 limit even though the state is over?
Yes. So what he's talking about there is to get felony retail theft, Kim Fox said, well, it's going to be $1,000. The state limit is $300, I believe, right? $300, right? So if you think about that, if you're a criminal and if you go to and you're coming west on I-80, are you going to go north or south? If you go south, the limit's $300 and you're charged with a felony. If you go north and you steal something, you can go to 1,000. And you don't have to be a genius to figure that out.
If you commit a retail theft and you're charged, you commit a second retail theft, it could be $10 because you already have a conviction. It's technically a felony. Kim Fox has a rule where you have to have 10 convictions prior to that.
And you can't even get a conviction from Cook County. So think about how many times you have to be a criminal to get 10 convictions, right? Remember the 3 strikes and you're out, right? I mean, so yeah. Basically, like I said before, we've been living with the Safety Act since Kim Fox was elected, okay? We in Orland Park, all of Cook County. Safety Act is really Kim Fox's policies put statewide with a bunch of other bad stuff as well, but from a criminal prosecution perspective. So,
Ever, just a thing. There's been rumors and people have been talking and this and that about changing Orland Park from Cook County to Will County. Is that
well, we're in both. We're in Cook and Will. So that would require, first it would require a referendum of the people of Orland Park. We could probably get that passed, okay? But then it requires a referendum across the county, and they would have to let us go. You think Cook County wants to let their third leading tax generator, Chicago, Schaumburg, us, out of, maybe fourth, but do you think they're gonna let us out? No. So, but on the flip side, it's not all the sunshine and lollipops that you think it is, because I promise you, if that happens, your property tax is going to go up 50% on your homes. Because the way Cook County's property tax, now they screwed this up a long time ago, unfortunately, and so but every other county in the state, residential and commercial are taxed and assessed at the same rate, okay? So if you're a $500,000 commercial property, you pay the same taxes as a $500,000 resident. In Cook County, the commercial pays 2.5 times the amount of tax that residential does. It's shifted, the burden is shifted to businesses, which is why it's hard to attract businesses, which is why LaGrange is so hard, because the property taxes are so astronomically high. But to move off of that, you've got to shift the burden from the businesses back to the residents. So, I don't know what your taxes are in Orland Park. Mine are 12, they're going to go to 18. And that's what a house like mine would be taxed. It would be 18 to 20 grand in Will County. So if you're a $6,000 house right now, you'd be 9 or 10 in Will County. So we actually, in some ways, we have a benefit in that we can, residential, we have an advantage, right? We can attract residences because it's cheaper. But businesses is where we have a disadvantage. The advantage for us is we have the mall, we have so much traffic that a lot of these businesses can afford to pay the taxes because of that. So. And down in Eagle Ridge, you're close to Will County, but your taxes would go up a lot. Yeah, the downside with Cook County is the criminal aspect of it, the state's attorney's aspect of it. So that's probably the big downside that we have here, right? She's retiring, but she's going to get someone just as bad or worse. I think the person running is as bad or worse. I mean, it's no different than the mayor's race. Everyone said, Lori Lightfoot, I said, be careful what you wish for, because he's worse. And, so that's just. Any other questions? Well, I really want to thank you all for coming out and braving the cold and everything. This was a great turnout, a lot of good questions.
Thank you.
And so, hey, one last thing. You want to show the drone footage of Schuessler Park? We've got drone footage of Schuessler Park too. That project's been really cool because all the water is stored underneath the fields. Yeah, you can have music this time. So you can see the new parking lots in. There's water storage. That was like a 15 to 20 foot deep hole. There's all kinds of vaults underneath that store water. And now the gravel's all in over that. The lighting poles are already in for the fields. And you can see there's very little water in there. They've been dredging. They're actually dredging as we're speaking. So this is mid-December. So the dredging is now done. So big change to that, and then I'm hoping we get a video of the new sledding hill that's going in as well. So there's the new sledding hill. So they've been taking a lot of what they're dredging and putting it there and starting to build the sledding hill up. So yeah, and that's going to have a ramp that's accessible for handicaps, so they can actually get up the hill and use it. So thanks again for coming. I appreciate it. It was a great turnout.